Right now, a massive global shift is colliding directly with local industrial policy, and it's gearing up to entirely change the cars we drive. In this explainer, we're diving into a multi-million-dollar gamble, a complete rethinking of automotive manufacturing, and the future of transportation on a developing power grid. Let's kick things off with a massive number. 1.5 million. That is BYD's adjusted global electric vehicle export target for 2026. And what's wild is they originally had a lower goal, but they actually revised it upwards by 15%. This isn't just some optimistic sales target, it's setting the stage for one of the most aggressive international automotive expansions we've ever seen, especially as they look to expand beyond an incredibly competitive domestic market in China.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the global EV surge, Pakistan's master auto policy, BYD enters the market, hybrids versus pure electric, and finally, roadblocks and future realities.
All right, part one, the global EV surge. To really grasp this surge, we have to look at how a company that started out back in 1995 as a Chinese battery manufacturer evolved into an undisputed global EV titan. BYD isn't just shipping finished cars on boats anymore, they're setting up massive manufacturing plants everywhere, from Thailand and Brazil to Turkey, Hungary, and now South Asia. By physically putting assembly lines in these regions, they're slashing logistics costs and brilliantly bypassing regional trade barriers.
And here's the crucial point. They aren't just planning for growth on a whiteboard. They're already executing it at a totally unprecedented scale. Hitting over 1 million overseas units in 2025 means their entry into new, emerging markets is backed by massive capital and highly refined manufacturing experience. They know exactly how to scale up, and fast.
Which brings us to part two, Pakistan's master auto policy. Now, global titans don't just drop $150 million without a very specific, rock-solid local framework in place. Decades of industrial history are really condensed into a steady evolution here. Back in 1987, Pakistan started with a deletion program, which forced mandatory localization, but honestly, that often resulted in low-tech parts being made locally, while the critical high-tech stuff was still imported. To comply with global trade rules, this evolved into the tariff-based system in 2006, then the Auto Industry Development Program, and finally the modern export-focused framework we're looking at today, ADP 2021 to 2026. The architects behind this modern shift are the Engineering Development Board, working alongside the Ministry of Industries and Production. They drafted the Auto Industry Development and Export Policy with a very specific philosophy in mind. They wanted to move the country away from just being a basic assembly hub and transition it into a true make-in-Pakistan manufacturing powerhouse. And this ADIP framework is incredibly ambitious. We're talking a target capacity of 650,000 vehicles annually. But it's not just about volume, right? It's about quality and global reach. They want auto manufacturers to export at least 10% of the value of their imports by 2026. And crucially, for the buyer, this policy actually enforces international W-29 safety regulations. It's a comprehensive plan aimed at improving consumer welfare, driving exports, and demanding much higher standards across the board. Let's dive into part three. BYD enters the market. So what happens when global expansion meets an aggressive local manufacturing policy? You get a massive new manufacturing presence in Synth. Here are the hard numbers on this groundbreaking partnership between BYD and Mega Motor Company. They're building a $150 million new energy vehicle assembly plant. Right out of the gate, it's going to have an annual capacity of 25,000 units. It's expected to create over 1,100 direct jobs, plus even more throughout the local supply chain. And if you're tracking the timeline, they're aiming to roll vehicles off the line by the third or fourth quarter of 2026. But here's the thing, the ultimate test of this facility won't just be bolting together imported parts. The real measure of success is graduating from importing completely knocked-down kits, known as CKDs, to actually integrating locally manufactured high-tech components. That is where the real industrial leap happens. And this step-by-step localization strategy perfectly aligns with the government's long-term mandate. Step one is practical. You just have to start by importing the complex core components, like batteries and electric motors. Step two brings in the low-hanging fruit, localizing glass, tires, and interior trim. Step three is the hardest part for sure, developing high-standard Tier 1 local suppliers. If they can pull that off, they reach step four, which is using Pakistan as a right-hand drive export hub for regions like Africa and South Asia. Okay, moving to part four, hybrids versus pure electric. What kind of vehicles will actually roll off this assembly line for the local driver?
Well, we have a fascinating contrast right now between automotive tech and the reality of developing infrastructure. On one hand, you've got pure battery EVs, like the Sea Lion 7, beautiful, high-tech, boasting a 567-kilometer pure electric range. But they are entirely dependent on you finding a charger. On the other hand, you've got plug-in hybrids, or PHEVs, like the Shark 6. For many, these are an immediate practical necessity. Because they have a combustion engine backing up the electric motor, they offer over 800 kilometers of combined range. That means zero range anxiety on those long highway stretches where chargers just don't exist yet. And honestly, whether it's a hybrid or a pure EV, BYD definitely isn't compromising on quality for emerging markets. They are bringing their world-class vertical integration directly to the local assembly line. A major standout here is their blade battery technology. It literally passes extreme nail penetration safety tests that cause competitor batteries to fail, which is an incredibly reassuring engineering feat. Combine that with a massive lifespan of up to 5,000 cycles and their highly efficient e-Platform 3.0, and you've got world-class tech hitting local roads. But to make those pure EVs viable, you absolutely need power. This infrastructure push by Hubco Green is a critical piece of the puzzle. They're planning a massive Karachi to Peshawar charging corridor. By late 2026, they're targeting 40 to 50 operational stations. This is a vital stepping stone to support the government's broader, highly ambitious goal of 3,000 charging stations nationwide by 2030.
Finally, Part 5, Roadblocks and Future Realities.
Look, despite all this incredible momentum and optimism, we've got to be realistic. It is not an entirely smooth road ahead. We need to impartially examine the real hurdles standing in the way of this EV revolution. To make a $150 million investment truly viable, the auto industry desperately needs stability. Right now, policies are operating on short-term 12-month extensions. What automakers actually need is a predictable 10-year framework. On top of that, there are severe limitations with local grid capacities for fast charging, a distinct lack of local Tier 1 suppliers capable of handling high-tech component manufacturing, and a constant market threat from untaxed used vehicle imports that really undermine local production.
Now, for anyone watching wondering how all this macro policy actually affects your wallet, the simple answer is patience is key. Early adopters are absolutely going to pay a premium, but as local assembly scales up and import duties shift away from heavily taxed, fully built units toward localized kits, the total ownership costs will inevitably drop. The supply chain just needs time to mature. The massive investments have been signed. The $150 million plant opens its doors in 2026. The cars are absolutely coming. But as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this final thought. Will the national grid actually be ready to power the revolution they are building? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.